Wanna talk? So let's talk. Yeah. Talk. You wanna talk? You gotta talk, you need to talk. News talk.
I talk, you talk to Solomon. I talk, you talk to Solomon. Yeah, let's talk to Solomon. Talk to Solomon.
You gotta talk, you wanna
Welcome back, my friends. It's Talk to Solomon time. I'm Stan Solomon. I'm the host.
Chief Steve Davis, in-studio co-host.
And our guest of honor, the ambassador, former ambassador, Dr. Alan Keyes, who you can't, he's like Charlton Heston, where all you have to do is take any book from any library, turn to a page, and he can make people cry. Well, Alan can do that with any topic. He's just that passionate and that knowledgeable. So I want to talk about something here for a minute, Alan. We're having this discussion off air, and I think it's worth bringing on the air. Life in America has gotten much more difficult. Black people in this country are dramatically worse off since Barack Obama's been elected. They've lost, some say, approximately 90% collectively of their net worth. Home ownership is at an 18-year low and dropping. The percentage of Americans working is the lowest it's been since the 60s. Our country is going to hell in a handbasket. And yet we're being told to focus on things that can only hurt us, certainly can't help us. And meanwhile, it's party till you drop at the White House. Now, if this were a Republican, if this were a white person, a Republican white person, the media would be attacking physically, much less with their various means of communication. But this guy is being allowed to do things, and everyone knows he's a failure. Even he knows he's a failure. Today, he actually said, maybe I should just go home. And I don't know if he heard the standing ovation he got from half of America, but the reality is that we literally have someone in a position of honor and power who is doing all he can to dishonor and disempower America. Your comments?
Well, so I understand. The only thing I would say, though, is that this looks like incompetence only from the point of view of those of us who love America, care about America, want to see the people of this country respected and the integrity of their sovereignty, in respect for their basic rights, in respect for their willingness to acquit the responsibilities they have as heads of households, as parents of children, as citizens who care about their community. Americans did and have done over the course of the decades of this nation's life a great job of grappling with the economic challenges and ultimately the moral challenges that the country faced. They have vindicated the idea of government, of, by, and for the people that was reviled over the centuries. If you love the country, if you want to see that success reestablished, strengthened, continued, so that it can continue to have what has been, I think, an inspiring effect on people around the world, then what you see in Barack Obama is failure, because he has been weakening our economic life, targeting and destroying our moral character, undermining those things that are needed to sustain the culture of our family life. In addition to which, he has taken decisions that undermine our national security, that destroy the integrity or continue the destruction of the integrity of our borders, that expose our troops to danger, having them in the midst of situations where, on account of the deep confusion of their mission and the difficulties that are heaped upon them on account of the obvious contempt which their commander-in-chief has for the task that faces them, suicide rates are phenomenally high now in the military, with all that goes along with that. So if you think that and care about the country, all this looks really bad. But Stan, shift your perspective for a second. Let's say that you were a person who has come along from an ideological perspective that hates what the United States has represented throughout its history, that hates the results that it has produced in the economic realm, that actually looks upon them not just with contempt, but with a desire to see all of that destroyed, because it contradicts your ideas of socialism and totalitarian control and all of these things that Obama subscribes to and has subscribed to throughout his career. Well then, Stan, the first thing you have to do if you want to replace something is get rid of it. Barack Obama has had the declared intention from his young years, from the time when he sought out socialist and communist companions and professors and so forth, with whom he has continued to surround himself in the White House. He's had it as his objective to tear down, overturn, and get rid of the free enterprise system, capitalism, bourgeois morality, all of these things that the leftists hate. And guess what he's been doing? He's had a remarkable success, hasn't he, Stan? Undermining the foundations of the character, the moral understanding, the family structure, the strategic strength and position of the United States, the morale of our people and of the forces that are required to protect us and so forth. And now, with things like the Boston attack, people are finally waking up to the truth that when you open the nation in this way to contempt by those who want to destroy us, when you open the gates of our borders to infiltration by those who want to destroy us, when you alter our approach to national security, immigration, and everything else to facilitate their work, you get that kind of result. The only thing that I would say, Stan, is I think people need to stop entertaining this myth that what we're looking at here is an incompetent. We're not looking at an incompetent. I think Barack Obama and his faction and the forces, whatever they call themselves, whatever party label they wear, that are willing to cooperate with, go into coalition with, aid and abet what he is doing. These people aren't incompetents. They are competently destroying this nation, its constitution, its liberty, its people, its strength, and they mean to do so.
I think you're 100% correct that a thief that steals is not incompetent. They are, in fact, competent. A rapist who rapes is not incompetent. They are, in fact, competent. And an anti-American, anti-God, anti-Christian, anti-free enterprise, anti-capitalist who destroys the aforementioned is most assuredly competent. You can be evil and be competent. Jack the Ripper was. And Obama the Destroyer is, in my humble opinion. Now, Chief, do you have a comment there?
Sure, a small comment. And Dr. Keyes is on target, but I want to quote Hillary Clinton and say, what difference does it make? Because someone that can create a great work of art can also destroy a great work of art. But someone that can't make a great work of art can also destroy a great work of art. So whether Barack Obama is competent or not, he is intent on destroying America, and he's very good at it.
All right, speaking of destruction, and good segue here, they have discovered, allegedly, a new superbug, allegedly, that is an STD, allegedly, that may kill more people than the 30 million who have died from AIDS. And we have the scientific communities raising the alarm. Now, I don't have any personal knowledge. They may be 100% correct. I just don't trust the quote-unquote scientific community because they gave us the myth of global warming. But if, in fact, this new superbug, a gonorrhea strain, can, in fact, kill in a few days, unlike AIDS, which takes weeks, months, years, it could be something. Now, Jerry Falwell was given a hard time. Pat Robertson was given a hard time because they would say when things happen, they believed, and by the way, so do I, that God is in charge. And something that impacts people, whether it's one sparrow or a billion people, God knows. God's in charge. Was AIDS, was this, or will this be one of those things that impacts those who would spit in God's face? The promiscuous. Don't know the answer. Worthy of some discussion. Dr. Keys.
What you raised, Dan, brings to my mind something I've pondered from time to time in the way that we react to certain things because of the successes that have been achieved by our modern scientific approach, our scientific method. And we react to some features of our human life as if everybody who came before this scientific method was developed. Those people could not learn anything from their experience. They never applied it. And therefore, everything they did was just based on ignorance and superstition. Of course, in the midst of this contempt that we live by for previous eras and previous times of human experience, we do occasionally have to admit that, for instance, all the things we're now discovering about diet and the property of certain spices and the property of other things that help to strengthen the immune system and so forth and so on. Isn't it a coincidence that in dietary practices and regimes from India to other parts of the world, the culture of human diet that was developed in a lot of places put an emphasis on the very things our science is now confirming as very essential to the way that the body protects itself from disease, to the way that it builds and strengthens the capacity of cells to renew themselves, and so forth and so on. Isn't that that's just a coincidence, right? Because no human beings ever learned it. Now, why do I say that? I go into all that, Stan, because I think that when we see what people did over the course of many thousands of years of human history, it seemed like every civilization that developed and lasted for any length of time developed an ethos, a discipline that was particularly aimed at making sure that human sexual passion wouldn't become self-destructive, that it would be channeled in a way that would help to build strong families and increase the population of their society so that they would have available the human capacities that were needed to sustain human life over the generations. People weren't that stupid where they stand. It turns out that even before they learned from empirical science, empirical meaning where you do an experiment. So even before they learned by experiment, they learned by experience, a word that our founders often used in their writing. And that experience then led them to certain conclusions. And those conclusions often served to help to structure and discipline the way people went about leading their lives in terms of human sexual relations, to structure and discipline the respect that they would have for their responsibility as parents, and the respect they had for the structures of the natural family and the kinship relations developed in that structure, and on and on and on. What do you say, Stan, if we now, in the arrogance of our so-called science, having destroyed and backed away from the understanding that these folks had of the kind of responsible discipline that was needed in order to sustain the strength of human communities by respecting the responsibilities we have that are tied to procreation, tied to the perpetuation of the species? Maybe they had something. And maybe in our arrogance, we backed away from that understanding, and we are now having to learn by harsh experience what over the course of thousands of years of experience, these many human communities throughout the world had already learned. And so we're suffering the consequences of having turned our back on the lessons that lead us to accept the boundaries of our natural desires and natural passions, and to discipline them in a way that will be conducive to the good of the species as a whole and of the human communities we form as a whole. What if that's what's going on, Stan? And of course, I stand back and I look at that and I say, what you just said, Alan, is maybe by respecting the wisdom of the Creator God, who gave us some indications beforehand of what was needed for our good, we can actually achieve that good. And maybe by rejecting that wisdom, we throw ourselves over the precipice of human self-destruction. I just think it's sad we have to learn by this kind of tragic experience, Stan, instead of paying attention to what both previous human experience and the benevolent revelation of our God has actually given us reason to know already.
Well said, and I frankly have used that line somewhat in the past, not as eloquently. Folks, I must tell you, I need your help. I need witnesses that I am not a cookie thief. I have been taking the cookies of certain individuals here for consumption purposes. So, Paul, come up here. This is Paul Jensen, one of our crack staff, or cracked staff, one of the other. And I want you to know that I am contributing to the cookie fund. You are my witness.
All right.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
And I want to tell you, as the police, I really was not convinced that you didn't coerce him into giving the cookies. He did kind of say yes. He didn't really say no, but it's a little wishy-washy, but you did the right thing, Stan.
Exactly. And I threatened it with you. Thank you, Paul. By the way, going back to Dr. Key's point, folks, there's a reason God told us not to covet. There's a reason God told us to put God first in our life. There's a reason God told us not to lie, not to steal. There's a reason God told us to become one with a person of the opposite sex and honor him in your life. There's a reason. There's a more colloquial concept of saying if you piss in the wind, you'll end up with a face full. Humanity, and particularly liberals, have made a science of pissing in the wind, but they've learned to duck, and we end up with the face full. We need to learn. Would you like to comment on that word picture?
No, but I would like to add one thing about this topic, and that is Dr. Keyes mentioned experience. And so at the same time, that's so critically important. In the public school system, we're taking our children that have no experience and teaching them that they're supposed to be promiscuous with sex, and it's okay with the condom, even though condoms have not been proven effective to prevent venereal disease infection. It's a tragic loss to our kids, tragic loss to our society, and but that shows what this government is willing to do in order to get their way.
And the FDA just approved the sale of morning after pills to 15-year-olds. Dr. Keyes?
Well, Stan, what the chief mentioned, particularly about condoms, because that's one of those things now that's kind of routine. It's all taken as a joke, and everybody thinks that they're protecting themselves. Oh, you care about your children if you are saying to them, you use condoms because they're going to do it. So there's nothing you can do about that. This is what the line has been. And I have said for many years, Stan, that I never understood that. Would you consider somebody a good parent if they handed their child a 6-shot revolver with 1 bullet in it and said, go ahead and play spin the barrel and put the barrel to your head and fire? That's what you're doing when you tell them that they're safe using a condom, because as I understand it, for various reasons that not only have to do with the nature of the product, but its use and abuse, that's a method that's likely not to protect. First of all, even in its supposed use, it's not going to protect you over 80% of the time. But other things contribute to its failure because, for instance, the various and assorted organisms that will contribute to your dying of sexually transmitted diseases, a number of them are, the condom is permeable to those organisms and so forth, so it's not real protection. So it's essentially, Stan, playing a kind of biased game of Russian roulette. And we're pretending that encouraging our kids to do this is consistent with loving them and with having a responsible attitude toward them. That's insane. And of course, the right approach would be to try to, from the get-go, inculcate a sense of the real nature of the activity that is connected with the wonderful gifts of passion and pleasure and so forth and so on that are these days being abused, rather than starting at an earlier and earlier age, because you've probably been reading, they're now trying to promote hedonism. There was a story last week that they were using, proposing to use these graphic cartoons, right? Sexual cartoons to teach kids in elementary school. And they're so graphic that the New York Times couldn't print them. And yeah, they're going to be shared with the kids in school. What I think this is a kind of insanity, to be quite frank about it, Stan. It reminds me of the old pagan phrase, those whom the gods would destroy, they first make mad. But it seems to me that those who are bent on their own destruction abandon the truth and the benevolent wisdom that the God of our health and true sanity has shared with us. And we make ourselves mad. And that's what's going on in our society.
We have run out of time, unfortunately, but when I hear people saying that all kids do it, I want to, because I'm a sensitive person, put on a glove and punch them in the mouth, because it's not true. When I hear that condom usage will prevent anything, because I'm a sensitive person, I want to put on a glove and punch them in the mouth, because there's no consistent prediction with condom usage that it will prevent anything, much less everything. When I hear people saying that it is okay to teach children that promiscuity is pleasurable and okay and healthy, then I want to take these psychologists and psychiatrists and disembowel them with a rusty fork. I am just frustrated that we have too few people standing up and saying that's utter nonsense and it's evil. And you just said you're mad, Dr. Keys, because it's so stupid. It's not stupid. It's insidious. It's by design to eliminate innocence, because hedonism is based on sex with children. And to the point that they have sex with the children, and like the Romans, who all went to hell, they kill the kids when they're done using them. They took newborn babies and used their natural suckling instinct to use them for sex. And then they killed them. Folks, we're headed there. But it'll have to be over many people like Dr. Keys and Chief Steve and me. We're not going to go willingly to hell with these morons. Closing thought.
Well, I was just thinking, this is a very serious topic, but I was thinking about the messages that we give these kids. And so if we think about all of that, first of all, it's like, say no to drugs, do your homework, don't text and drive, no drinking. Oh, but by the way, use condoms and have all the sex that you want. What a message that we're sending is in it. But you've hit the nail on the head, Stan. It's really to set these kids up for what the left really wants, is that to use them for sex and other ideas, and it's insidious.
And then throw them away.
And throw them away.
Keys.
Well, Stan, I would again ask folks to pay attention on Friday, because the piece that I'll be publishing at WorldNet Daily is about the abuse of children in order to achieve the ideological ends and aims of these totalitarians who are trying to destroy our society. And it is precisely the mentality you just described, where they are promoting this licentiousness, this lack of real understanding of these passions and their true purpose and function, so that the children can be used and abused for their nefarious purposes, including their ideological agenda for the destruction of the natural family, and therefore the dissolution, in fact, of our social fabric. So I hope folks will stop by WorldNet Daily on Friday and read through it. I think it's worth considering.
Dr. Keys, it's a privilege to hear you, to get to know you even better, and to help you to share your thoughts with the hundreds of thousands of people that watch this program. Good night, everyone. Good night, Dr. Keys. Good night, Chief Steve.
Good night.
If I wanted America to fail, to follow, not lead, to suffer, not prosper, to despair, not dream, I'd start with energy. I'd cut off America's supply of cheap, abundant energy. I couldn't take it by force. So I'd make Americans feel guilty about using the energy that heats their homes, fuels their cars, runs their businesses, and powers their economy. I'd make cheap energy expensive, so that expensive energy would seem cheap. I would empower unelected bureaucrats to all but outlaw America's most abundant sources of energy. After banning its use in America, I'd make it illegal for American companies to ship it overseas. If I wanted America to fail, I'd use their schools to teach one generation of Americans that their factories and their cars will cause a new ice age, and I'd muster a straight face so I could teach the next generation that they're causing global warming. When it's cold out, I call it climate change.